Okay, enough with the Titanic intro, let's just get to the actual informative part of the video. RMS Olympic was the first of the trio of ocean liners called the Olympic class. The Olympic class had 3 ships, 2 of them consisting of the famous Titanic and the Britannic, and White Star Line is keen onto also claiming the title of the world's biggest ship, back from Cunard, after previously stealing it from them after the construction of Lusitania and Mauritania. Construction began for the trio of ships in 1907, with RMS Clickbait and RMS Olympic having their keels laid down first in Harlyn and Wolff shipyard. About 3 years after Olympic's keel was laid, she was launched in October 20th, 1910. She was painted white so the cameras could have the best quality photo possible for the press to use. Seen here is RMS Olympic being launched. How they managed to launch this massive ocean liner, which was considered the world's biggest at the time, is by using several different types of oil, which helped her slip down through the slipway and into the lake or river. But wait, construction on her isn't finished yet. When she was launched, she was just an empty hull with no decor, with none of the recognizable 4 funnels installed yet. There's a very good reason for this, but I won't explain that in this video. After she was fitted out with the 4 funnels and her interior fitted in, she was put into passenger service in 1911. Fun fact about the funnels: the 4th funnel on all Olympic class liners was not linked to the engine room, but instead the smoking room and the cooking room, to truly show how much of a smoking addict some of the people are in the Olympic class liners. When she was put into passenger service, then she truly became the world's largest ocean liner. But this didn't last long, as roughly a year later, her younger sister, the Titanic, or Clickbait, was launched, making her the largest ocean liner by tonnage. In the Clickbait, I mean Olympic class trio. These massive ships were propelled by massive triple-screwed propellers, which drove the ships forwards. Olympic in particular had its center propeller built in with 4 blades, and for Titanic, it'll be 3-bladed. This was because they wanted to see if a 3-blade center propeller would be more efficient than a 4-bladed center propeller. These propellers were massive, apparently the biggest in their time. Powering these propellers were 2 3-story high reciprocating engines and 1 turbine engine for the center propeller. To turn this massive ship, a rather big rudder under the poop deck or overhang was used. These engines were fired by steam and coal, giving the Olympic the top speed of 23 knots. Pause for a minute. How did we get to 3-shaft propellers? Well, White Star bought some ships from the Albany line. One was 2 screws and the other was 3 screws. The 3 screws was better than the 2 screws, obviously, so they chose the 3-screw design. Now, where were we? Alright, Olympic. Despite this, during her career, she surpassed her designed speed limit, reaching the speed of 24.2 knots, traveling the North Atlantic at just 5 days, 12 hours, and 39 minutes. Anyways, to the maiden voyage. In her first voyage, she was captained by Captain Edward J. Smith. She was also carrying J. Bruce Esme, aka the dude who abandoned ship like a coward apparently, and Thomas Andrews, designers of the ship's interiors, or at least I think he designed the ship's interiors. When she finally reached New York, many came to the dock to witness the now famous Olympic. When Olympic reached the docks themselves, the dock workers expected Olympic to be big, but her true size made the dock workers doubt if she will be able to dock in New York. The tugboat that was following Olympic closely behind her got sucked into Olympic's hull and scraping some paint off. This is a little foreshadowing on the Hawk collision that will soon follow. Right afterwards, RMS Olympic proceeded to dock at Pier 58 or 59 and then scrape her paint at the bow. Moving on, during the night of April 14th through 15th, RMS Olympic was just 500 miles south by west of Titanic. She was originally heading towards Titanic, but RMS Carpathia recommended Olympic to continue on its voyage. since the appearance of RMS Olympic would spook the passengers of Titanic, since they were almost identical. So she continued on her way to England. A year after the Titanic disaster, and after a worker strike on RMS Olympic, she was completely overhauled with a new watertight skin that covers the side of Olympic, and an additional 64 lifeboats were added onto her. A few more restaurants was also added to the ship, such as Titanic's Cafe Prison and Titanic's bridge wing overhangs, and she was quickly put back into service. Then comes 1914, which means the world is about to have a world war. By this time, her third sister, or should I say the second sister, the Titanic, was completed and put into hospital ship duties, so they can cope with the amount of losses in the dumpster fire known as the Gallipoli campaign. Luckily, RMS Olympic was not converted into a hospital ship, but instead a troop ship sailing from Halifax to Great Britain. A year into the war, the Titanic, or the Britannic, struck a mine and sank. Olympic was once again alone in the Atlantic, without a running mate, now being paired with the older Oceanic, until she too sank. Olympic survived World War I, but this doesn't mean she didn't have close calls. The most significant encounters of which was the U-103. The U-103 attempted to sink Olympic with some torpedoes, but struggled to fill the torpedo tube with seawater. When she was sighted, it resulted in Olympic turning hard to port and ramming the U-boat, causing it to sink. By this time, RMS Olympic herself finally earned a title. Her nickname was to be Old Reliable. She was briefly pulled from service to install 6-inch guns for defense, but they were pretty useless. Anyways, after the war, Olympic was to use her massive size to transport thousands of soldiers back to the Americas, before being painted back to her White Star colors and resuming transatlantic voyages. Despite her success, the war had taken its toll on Olympic, and she looked more and more outdated with every new ship launched. She was again overhauled and refitted in 1919. Her old coal-fired engines were replaced with oil-fired ones, and one of the most beautiful staircases in the world became the most disgusting staircase in the world. Why? Because they painted it green for some reason. Once returned into service, RMS Olympic entered her golden years during the 1920s, but declined as a liner as time marched on. White Star kept trying to maintain Olympic and make her up to modern standards, but it clearly became clear that she could not be saved. It didn't help that around this time, RMS Titanic rammed a lightship in May 1934. Adding insult to injury, White Star was forced to merge with its former rival Cunard, becoming Cunard White Star. Cunard led the merger since they had more ships. Cunard scrapped dozens of White Star vessels after the merger, and ultimately they decided scrapping the Olympic was the only thing left to do. Cunard sold most of her interiors to hotels and other businesses, and after 24 years of service, the RMS Olympic was broken up and sold for scrap, ending the Olympic class liners once and for all. Today we remember RMS Olympic as White Star's luckiest ship.